Next, we're going to be hearing from Professor Alex de Waal. Hold on one moment. There he is. Professor de Waal thank you for joining us. Professor de Waal is Executive Director of the World Peace Foundation, and he's also a research professor at the Fletcher School at Tufts University. He's one of the foremost experts on Sudan and on the Horn of Africa. His work has probed humanitarian crises in the area and responses, human rights, the HIV/AIDS epidemic, governance in Africa, and conflict and peace building. He's worked for several Africa-focused human rights organizations focusing on the Horn of Africa. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Professor, and providing a bit more context about what has led up to the current conflict.
Thank you very much, and greetings to everybody, and to those of you who are Tigrayans on the call, my condolences. Over the last 6 months, I've been quite outspoken in calling out the atrocities and the dangers of the current war. And as a result, many Tigrayans have contacted me. And at the beginning, I always asked, how is your family? And I soon learned that the correct greeting was condolences, because everybody has lost somebody. And the information blackout that has been in place for 6 months now has been extraordinarily effective in preventing a comprehensive picture from emerging. There is no internet, there is no cell phones, journalists have not been able to venture beyond 1 or 2 locations. Aid agencies have not been able to venture also beyond a handful of locations. And it's even the basic rudiments of communication, which are standard for a humanitarian agency in a crisis situation such as this, such as a two-way radio, have not been permitted by the Ethiopian government. And it's quite extraordinary that in the year 2021, an area that contains 5-6 million people should be so shut off from the external world that that it is possible for the United Nations to estimate that 5.2 million people are in need of emergency assistance, and less than 1 million people are actually receiving it. And for the Ethiopian government to say, no, it's only just over 1 million people and they're all getting it. And the journalists to be unable to substantiate actually what is happening and refute the false stories that are being told us. So that is my preface, is just to say it is quite extraordinary how little is known about this crisis, yet we know enough. We know enough to know that crimes against humanity are being perpetrated, including mass killings. There is a group in Belgium that has a list of more than 150 mass killings, starvation crimes, sexual and gender-based violence. But let me not go into that. This is for others. Let me start with Abiy Ahmed's Nobel Prize. Now, one of the ways in which we in the West tend to look at peacemakers, especially in Africa, is charismatic individuals. It takes an individual with goodwill and inspiration to make peace. And ignoring the norms, the principles, the institutions that underpin peacemaking. The African Union, for which I've worked, is in many ways a weak institution with many flaws. But what it has put in place over the years is a set of norms and principles for institutionalized peacemaking, including inclusion of all constituencies in making peace, including democratic principles, including justice in peace agreements, and including mechanisms for monitoring. And when the peace agreement was made between Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki in 2018, everybody celebrated. But those two leaders did not go to the African Union. For the first time, an Ethiopian leader boycotted the African Union summit. Instead, they went first to Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and then they went to Saudi Arabia. And the reason for that was that for Isaias Afwerki, this was not the institutionalization of peace. This was an opportunity for enhancing his own military power and pursuing his ambition. And those in the Middle East had a transactional approach to politics. They wanted him on side because they were fighting a war in Yemen, and they were using Eritrea, which is just across the sea from Yemen, as the base for their military operations. They, in fact, were financing what was a garrison state, a state without a constitution, without a parliament, without a judiciary, without a press, and which has really only one functioning institution, maybe two, one being the army, the other one being the security forces. Indefinite, compulsory conscription of all 11th graders into indefinite national service. And the justification for maintaining this state, this garrison state, was there was an unresolved conflict with Ethiopia. So the assumption of everybody was, when that conflict goes away, then the state can become a little bit more like a normal state. Political prisoners might be released, the army might be demobilized, etc. But not a bit of it. For Isaias Afwerki, this was an opportunity for him to extend his axis of autocracy beyond Eritrea. Now, there's some who ascribe an autocratic intent to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed from the beginning. I'm actually not one of those. I think he was a genuine reformer, but a very naive one. And he overpromised a transition from an authoritarian system, such as was in place in Ethiopia before he took office, developmental but authoritarian, to a more liberal one, is a time fraught with dangers. We've seen this in Egypt, in Syria, in Libya, etc. It's a time when those who are more ruthless in their use of money and guns can actually seize power, not at the expense of Democrats. And Abiy was not capable and ultimately not willing to keep a tight leash on those with whom he was doing deals. And so he did a number of unfortunate deals. He overpromised and ended up, as any politician who overpromises, disappointing some of those to whom he'd made promises. And those he disappointed were the Democrats. Those he stuck to were some who were the more assertive extremists in his own country and Isaias. And it was notable that in all previous situations in which the Nobel Committee has given a prize to countries that have made peace, they have divided the prize. Both leaders have got it. They could not stomach giving it to Isaias Afwerki. So, but he got what he wanted. He was not interested in the prize. He was interested in the lifting of sanctions on his country, the opportunity for rearming and getting out of the trap, the corner in which he had led his country. No war happens overnight. The first shots were fired on the evening of November 3rd, 4th. And the first shots were fired by the Tigrayan Defense Forces in taking over military bases in Ethiopia belonging to the federal forces. But anybody who had been observing Ethiopia knew that the parties were on collision course. All had made mistakes. The Tigrayans had escalated the confrontation. They had been reckless in some regards. They had appointed some rather insalubrious characters to the central committee of their party, and they were in defiant mode, and they miscalculated, and I'll come back to their miscalculation in a moment. Prime Minister Abiy also miscalculated. He thought he could be master of a war instead of the war becoming master of him. The one who did not miscalculate at that time was this veteran, ruthless operator, Isaias Afwerki. And one of the calculations that he made was that he had the backing of the Trump administration. And he had it not directly, because he did not have direct relations with them, but through their intermediaries, particularly the United Arab Emirates and to a lesser extent, Saudi Arabia. Now, we subsequently learned that the United Arab Emirates, which had been operating drones for its war in Yemen out of its base in Eritrea, the port of Eritrea, that it actually stopped those drone flights in October to Yemen. This is what they told us when the Biden administration said you have to make peace in Yemen. What we then discovered was during November, those drones continued to fly. No one told us where they were going, but the Tigrayan defenses in Tigray were decimated, were destroyed by drone attacks. Not a word has been mentioned by any government around the world as to where those drones came from. And those drones quietly disappeared in January at a time when the Biden administration basically twisted the arm of the Emiratis and said, do not be involved with Eritrea. So you can put two and two together and you can understand who gave the cover for this war at the beginning. It was a war which threatens not only to kill hundreds of thousands of people, to put back the development of Tigray region by 30 years, but also threatens to dismantle the entire country of Ethiopia and cause havoc across the region. It is a humanitarian crisis of the first order. It's also an international security crisis of the first order. And it was entered into with a blithe optimism on the part of warmongers in the Middle East and in Eritrea. Those same warmongers who some 6 years ago said, oh, this war in Yemen will be over in 6 weeks. We have overwhelming power. They had the same calculation for Tigray, and they were wrong. And the key reason why they were wrong, despite their early successes, was that if you inflict such astonishing cruelty on people, you kill so many young men, you rape so many women, you burn and destroy what is essential for people to survive, you vandalize their hospitals, you drive them off their land, what option do they have but to resist? And so the war plan of those who moved into Tigray in November was premised on the fact that they would break the will of the Tigrayan people through mass atrocity. What has happened actually is that they themselves are being broken by that mass atrocity. And it is absolutely essential that all sides cease this, this slaughter on the battlefield, the slaughter of civilians, and the starvation before the atrocities run out of control and this conflagration spreads.